welcome to another episode of Let's See Plants. I'm your host KD, and today we have a special guest all the way from Vancouver. She's an author, she's a vegan entrepreneur, and she recently released a book called Vegan Marketing Success Stories. Welcome, Sandra. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks so much for having me on, Katie.
Oh, for sure. I'm glad you know what I mean, came on. So the first question I want to ask you is, I was doing my research on you, and you mentioned on your website you're a ex-cult member. Explain what that is, because when I first heard of it, I thought it was some little freaky stuff. I ain't gonna lie, but yeah. Explain, how did you get involved with that?
Yeah, so I mean, an ex-cult member is obviously somebody who's left a cult, and that's pretty much what I did. So, yeah, so this was kind of at the end of 2012. I was at a point in my previous business where I just wanted to make more money. I was really into self-development, going to a lot of motivational speaker events, and a really good colleague of mine invited me to kind of like a girls group gathering at her parents' house, actually, here in Vancouver. And somebody was there who basically talked about this program that she was a part of. And this colleague that had invited me said she got some really good, stuff out of it, really wanted to share it with people, but didn't really know how to explain how. And so that's why she brought this person in to do a bit of a presentation. So I actually went with my sister. And my sister was really gung-ho. She was a new mom at the time. She's like, I want to sign up. I'd love to do this with you. And at the time I was like, I don't know, the deposit was $500 US. And then to pay for the rest of it was, I think, $1,500. But the person who did the presentation, I can say her name because she's a client of mine, Sarah Edmondson. She's very much out about it. She said, well, this is a personal and professional development program. So you can write this off on your taxes and for your business. So I went, yeah, I've got some cash in my business account. So, so I signed up with my business account. So the 5-day program that my sister and I took place in February 2013. Mm-hmm. And then after we did that 5-day program, which, the only way to explain it, it was basically like 5 straight days of therapy. Like I had never done therapy before in my life, and I learned a lot about myself in those 5 days and really, just really got a lot out of it. So my sister and I joined the 1-year program after that. So we continued on. And then from there, I got involved. I did a couple of like women's weekends and stayed in like kind of at arm's length with the program. I didn't really go deep in because going deep in requires like tens of thousands of dollars. So only people who could really afford that like really went deep into the organization. So during this time that I was involved with Nexium, there were rumors that it was a cult for a long time. Just like fishy stuff going on with the cult leader, Keith Raniere. He's serving 120 years in prison. I think he was sentenced in 2021 or 22, if I'm not wrong.
Let me ask you this. So when you was in that, what signs of like, what's the red flags you start seeing?
So the funny thing is I was trying to find Sarah's assistant's information to just get more information on like what's coming up in these 5 days. So I did some Googling, and then some fishy stuff came up about Nexium being a cult. And before the 5-day, I even emailed my sister. I'm like, should we get out of this and get her, we lost our deposit, but should we just like not take it? But my sister was really the person who was like, you know what? I just want to try it, see what I can get out of it. And that's why we stuck through, because we'd learned some things about ourselves once we took the program. So all of this talk about it being a cult just kind of like washed over me afterwards. But really, I mean, it wasn't until like the FBI really got involved and people in the group started blowing the whistle on like the criminal stuff that was happening that really the ball started to get rolling. This was around 2017. Sarah Edmondson was on the cover of the New York Times with her brand. and she had been branded with the initials of the group leader, Keith Raniere. So that's when it really started. And this is how cults operate now that I know. Like, they can operate for even decades, you know, kind of flying under the radar, even though there's fishy stuff going on. It's not until like people start getting brave, blowing the whistle, you know, authorities start getting involved and looking at the evidence, interviewing people, and then it starts bubbling up to the surface and blows wide open.
Educate me, because a cult, does that involve like sexual activities, or it can be sacrificing people?
I mean, no, absolutely. It can be anything. So what I've learned is, you know, the definition of a cult is a high control group. So you get in where, you know, you're usually isolated from your family and your loved ones. And it's all about like, we have the answer to life's problems. Mm-hmm. And that could involve, you know, sexual activities. It could involve like weird, you know, sacrificey stuff. It, you know, every group is kind of different, but the whole, I think the common theme that they all have is like coercive control. So you're coerced into like, whether it's paying or like attending, recruiting. And then there's almost always an abuse of power. So there's somebody at the top that's powerful, they're revered as a leader, and that's why they retain their membership. And there's usually like kind of below the leader an inner circle that kind of like runs the whole organization for the leader, and then everybody else underneath.
So you probably mentioned this, but how long you was in this?
About 4.5 years total.
Wow, 4.5 years. So you've been in it. Like, what did you learn about yourself being involved in that?
Yeah, trying to think back to like kind of the good things that I pulled away. Again, that 5-day, it was about really learning that I had placed a lot of, I guess, undue responsibility on my mom, and like blaming a lot of things that happened in my life on my mom and how she treated me personally, and that really lifted. Some other things were, just trying to like alleviating kind of those painful feelings that I get every time, let's say a potential client rejects a proposal or says no to working with me. I would always get that like sinking feeling. But there was an exercise that we did where, you know, you kind of remove that trigger so that next time it happens, you actually don't get that feeling. You just kind of brush it off. So there were some good things, but from what I know now is all of that curriculum was stolen from somewhere, whether it's books, other motivational speakers, even like religious texts. Like a lot of NXIVM's curriculum was pretty much stolen.
I see. And man, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, you're the first person I met that was involved in that. So that's good that you got out. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's super crazy, because like I said, when I hear things like that, I'm thinking of crazy stuff. You know, and you said the guy got 120 years in prison.
Yeah, for again, I don't know how many. It was like 11 counts of, you know, various crimes, from fraud to like sex trafficking and I don't know, labor and all of these things. I can't even count, but 120 years plus probation.
That's crazy. So what's your advice for anyone to prevent from being involved in a cult without unknowing? If that question makes sense. I hope I answered.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you're actually the first podcast host who's asked me about this. So
okay.
Yeah, I mean I think the first thing is to be educated, and luckily cults are so popular right now that there's a lot of podcasts, a lot of books out on the subject, a lot of TV shows that have reported on it. I mean, Netflix has like so many. So I recommend, you know, Sarah Edmondson was who brought me in to the group, but her and her husband Nippy have a wonderful podcast called A Little Bit Culty, and I do a little bit of work for them. So shout out to A Little Bit Culty, and they have a resources page where if you know somebody who's maybe possibly in a group like this, or you yourself feel like you might be in a group like this, head over to those resources, because there's a lot of support for folks who might want to, you know, see if they should be leaving a group, and cults never call themselves cults, remember. So it could be as simple as like, you know, a yoga group that it starts off really innocently, a self development program, and then it's not until you get deeper in that you realize like there's and then you start seeing the red flags. And so I think education is just really the first the first thing I would recommend, and a little bit culty is a great podcast to listen to.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's some great advice. Cause I didn't know Vancouver get down like that. I mean, it's like that everywhere, but
yeah, it started in Albany, and then Sarah and Mark Vicente, who's another colleague of hers, opened the center in Vancouver. So that's why Vancouver kind of became this hub for the group.
Okay, cool. So also, me doing my research, you're a introvert. I have a close friend who's an introvert, and though introverts are very, how can I explain about introverts? They remind me like it's a shield. It's like they inside of a shield, right? And then like it takes a special person to get them out they shell, right? This is my opinion. But so you've been that way. How difficult it was for you to like market your vegan brand?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think as an introvert, what's benefited me is learning how to market other brands or other people.
Oh, okay.
So that's been my first. Writing is actually my first skill, and it's kind of no surprise that it took me into marketing, because really the basis of doing marketing is messaging and writing and all of that. Yeah. When you're running your own business, you've got to promote yourself, and that can be tough for some introverts. But because I think I had this background in PR and marketing, and social media, you can kind of hide. Like I am used to doing videos now, but of course when social media first started, it was all just text based, which is great for introverts, because all we need to do is like, you know, do a text message. And then of course Instagram came along and YouTube, and then now you're forced to do, you know, images and videos and that sort of thing. So I think for me, it's been like a bit of a gradual process to like, break open that shell and show people more of myself. But I found that especially when I became vegan, and then my business was centered around supporting other vegan companies and other vegans, I kind of had to be out there as a vegan. Because we're only 1 to 4% of the global population. And so if you want to stand out, you kind of have to, just be comfortable with talking about yourself.
So was there times where you wanted to shut down and not, because, you know, I'm not really an introvert, but I know how they operate. Introverts, from one of my close friends, where like some days where he don't want to talk on the phone, or some days he don't want to go out the house. So how did you overcome that? It's not easy to do, being an introvert.
Yeah, I think it just has to do with social circles, and again, my first job right out of college was at a public relations firm. And we did a lot of event planning there. And so not just like promoting the event, but attending the event and like ticking off all of the people who came into the event. So that kind of, I guess, was my first foray into like just the professional side of work. Of course, running your own business, like you're a solopreneur like me, and you have no other person to do the marketing for you, you kind of just have to be out there. Appearing in media and podcasts is really important to marketing your business. So I think it was just, like I said before, kind of knowing what it took for other people, like as a marketer for other people, and knowing like, okay, I have to do this for myself if I want to get clients and grow my business. I just kind of like, I think, and especially as I, you know, progressed through my 30s, I started to care less about like how I looked or what people thought about me. Right. Age does that, you know. When you get older, you just like start giving less of a shit. So
no, it does, because I turned 30 in June, and you know, when I was doing this podcast, before I started, I was battling with that, caring what others think, and And that was tough. And as I got like start thinking and talk to different people, it's just like I'm not really caring. I stopped caring. The more I say this way, the more episodes I do, the less I start caring about how I look and what others think and stuff like that. Because I was very
Great.
self conscious and stuff like that. So, but I do want to ask you. So, why market vegan business? Like why not market regular business? Why vegan?
Yeah, so so I ran a little agency for just over 10 years.
Okay.
That was kind of what I did right after that first job out of college. And I closed it because one of our main service was just getting companies in the media. And I started to notice that social media started rising as the main tool that companies were doing to market themselves. And we did do a little bit of that for our clients. But yeah, I kind of came to the point where I realized either we become just another digital marketing agency in town, and there are already so many of those, or I'm going to close. So I decided to close my agency. I was freelancing for about a year and a half after that, kind of wondering what my next career path was going to be. And that was when I started as a vegan. I didn't think I was going to stay in marketing, but I sat down to meditate at the end of 2019, and I just got that booming intuitive voice that said, you're vegan and you're always going to be writing. So put those things together. And I know enough times when I ignore my intuition, it just comes back to me later and stronger. So when I heard that call, I was like, all right. So I threw up a service page on my personal website, which is still the website that I use right now. Okay. And right at the start of 2020, I started tapping into my network and asking folks, who do you know who needs a content writer and who runs a vegan company? And that's how this business started. So I started originally as just a copywriter, and then that's since evolved into going back and bringing in my PR skills from my agency days. Yeah. And then because of the pandemic, I had more time on my hands. So I started taking courses in book editing and formatting, and I started working with authors. So that brought in like the author piece that I work with now. And I ghostwrite, I edit, I format books. So, yeah, and I'm glad that my company has sort of expanded from just copywriting, because now AI has come on the scene, and a lot of people are just asking AI to write for them now rather than a human. So at least I have these other revenue streams that aren't just writing based. So that's how it started. Yeah.
So what made you want to switch to vegan? I know you was doing my research on you. You was vegan for a little while, then you stopped and you went back. What made you want to keep being consistent with this diet?
Yeah, I was never on and off. It was just a gradual process over 11 years. So it started when I first saw Earthlings, the documentary, at the end of 2007. And that just really impacted me deeply. That was the first piece of media that I saw that explained how meat gets on our plate.
Oh, okay. For me,
it was. Go ahead.
I'm bad to cut you off, but for me, I was watching What the Health, but that kind of like changed my perspective. But keep going. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, What the Health is another one of those documentaries people cite as helping them make the switch. Yeah. So I kind of started low and slow. I cut out all meats except for chicken, because that was the meat that I ate the most. And then another year after that, I let go of chicken, and I tried to get into seafood. I've never been a fan of seafood or eggs, but I would reserve those foods for the weekend. And then I started to learn to cook vegetarian or vegan during the week. And then I operated like that for many years, until my husband and I went on our honeymoon in New York City. Yeah. This was in 2017, and we went to Iron Chef Morimoto's restaurant. I ate what I call the best seafood meal of my life. And I said, it's not going to get better than this. So I'm just going to leave on a high note. So that was my last seafood meal. And then from there, it was just dairy. So, pizza, ice cream, those are some of my favorite foods. A lot of people's favorite foods, and they're dairy based. And for me, it was health reasons. So I've had these digestive issues for a long, long time that happened even before my transition started.
Oh, okay.
And I went to my naturopath when I had a really bad bout of acid reflux in the middle of the night, and she said, let's do a food sensitivity test. So I did the test. Turns out I was sensitive to dairy. And then I did a 4-month cleanse of all these foods that, you know, I'm supposedly sensitive to. And then I came to the end of those 4 months in 2018, and I was like, I can do this. I can do without dairy. And thus my vegan journey began, because as if you know, once you get rid of food or the animal products in food, everything else is so much easier. So 2018 is the date that I count from.
So I want to ask you this, because this is the problem I be having. Now, do you feel like sluggish since you've been vegan?
Not at all. And so, it was rough in the beginning when I was just letting go of meat. Like, I lost 10 pounds, which I thought was great, because just like the saturated fat just leaves your body once you stop eating meat. I never had kind of the tiredness that people talk about, but I think it's, you just have to just be aware of like your protein intake, your iron intake. I actually take iron supplements because without meat, I'm quite low. So I take supplements. I think you just have to, like, again, just be aware that beware of the intake of nutrients that you need to be taking. So protein, iron. People always talk about calcium. Calcium's not a big deal. B12, I take supplements for that too, because it can be hard to get naturally in food. And then your omega-3s, and I take a plant-based version of that. So I think as long as you're getting like what you need, your carbs and fat shouldn't be hard. Really easy to get that in plant food. Protein is a big one. But just get your nutrients and you shouldn't have a problem.
Yeah, because that was my problem. Like, I was very sluggish, aches in my knees. Never knew why, because I play a lot of basketball, until I went to the doctor. He told me that my vitamin D is low. So I'm like, that's explain why. I'm like, okay, so lately I've been eating a lot of mushrooms as my meat substitutes. Mushrooms and chickpeas really been my meat substitutes. And when I go back eat on Beyond Meat when I ate on back on, I cannot talk. I'm sorry. When I got back eating on Beyond Meat, my body could not take that. Like, I can't even eat it. I can still eat it, but I don't feel right. So I gotta keep listening to my body. And like, I tell people, like, I wouldn't encourage no one to go vegan, but I would say, like, just focus on like the plant based. Like, make sure wherever you eating, long you get your minerals. Cause like when I discovered, like, Beyond Meat doesn't have no minerals. You know what I'm saying? So I never knew that, and I was eating that for like 5 years straight, because I've been vegan for 5 years. So this, like, I went a month of like, you ever heard of alkaline?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's what I've been focusing on, and that really, I'm not gonna lie, it does wonders. I'm not gonna lie, but if you haven't tried, I think you should try it. I like it. But so so anyone that's struggling to stop eating meat, what is your advice?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I say substitutes are great. They may not work for everyone, right? Because like you said, Beyond Meat doesn't work for you. But I think they're just a great transition food. Because if you're used to eating burgers, hot dogs, other processed meats like deli meats, you want those foods because you're used to the taste or they're just in your routine. And so the easiest way to start transitioning is to use those substitutes. Now, I'm not going to say eat those every day because they're not great. Yeah, they're processed, and they might have like fillers and additives and yada yada. So they're not great to eat every day at every meal. But I would say, like, if you're eating them on the weekends, I give myself vegan junk food permission on the weekends, right? Because I know, I cook all my meals during the week, and I'm generally pretty healthy because of that. And then that's when I'm okay with eating the junk food. But really, what you want to do once you find your plant-based, because you're on substitutes, now you want to start eating whole food. And that's where that, like you said, the chickpeas come in, the beans, the lentils, the tofu, the tempeh. Like, there are so many plant foods I never knew about when I was growing up. that you just learn once. And you have this abundance of like choice now, where people think eating vegan is very limiting. It's because you don't know what's out there yet. All you know is meat, dairy, seafood, and eggs. Yeah. But once you convert all of that and all the nutrients that are in those to plant versions, that's what we're aiming for. Yeah, and then you find yourself on a plant-based diet. So that's what I recommend. Like, don't put like a limit on yourself of like, I want to do this in a month. Like, maybe if you're a great cook, you could do it. But I would say like it took me 11 years, but now with the substitutes that are on the market, and if you're already cooking in the kitchen, you could do this in a year. Yeah. You could probably transition in a year. And watch all of the documentaries, like watch Earthlings and What the Health and Cowspiracy, because that'll give you the emotional motivation to keep going.
So speaking of those documentaries you mentioned, how bad eating red meat is for the body, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge now, it's not great.
Explain it to the listener. I've been trying to tell people about this, please.
So not a doctor and not a nutritionist, but you don't need a PhD to know that red meat contains cholesterol and saturated fat. And those are the major contributors to clogged arteries, which then contribute to heart disease. Like, heart disease is the number one killer, I know for sure, in North America. I don't know globally. Yeah. But everybody thinks it's just like exercise and healthy eating. It's like, well, how do you eat healthy? You avoid that saturated fat and that cholesterol. So 100% it's contributing to heart disease. And then around 10 years ago, the WHO actually did a couple of studies and said that processed meat was a group 1 carcinogen, which means there are definitely ties to cancer. And red meat is a group 2A carcinogen, which is a likely association to cancer. And this information never like made it out in the media because they just got silenced, and the meat industry like just pushed it out of our minds. Like, it never just even got out there. They never had a chance. It's up there on WHO. You can look it up. But yeah, heart disease and cancer, like some of the top killers, as well as diabetes. So if you want to avoid those chronic diseases, red meat is definitely a good thing to cut out. And I will also say, my husband, for the last year, so this is going on year 2 for him, cut out red meat, and not a huge like change in his health, because he's already pretty health focused, but like in the bedroom, it's made a difference. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say.
I heard that.
Blood flow. It's made a difference.
I heard that. Yeah. They say, you ever heard they say red meat is worse than sugar?
I have not heard that.
You heard that? I was watching on What the Hell. Maybe I misheard it. But yeah, they say red meat is worse than sugar.
I mean, sugar is bad too, but possibly, as equally bad. Because both contribute to, I would assume, diabetes and maybe heart disease, so...
Yeah, it's funny you say heart disease, because that's how my dad passed away, from heart disease. So,
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, health is wealth, and a lot of people don't understand that. That's one of the reasons why I changed my diet, because of bad health runs in my family, and I didn't like the way how I was shaped. And me switching my diet, it helps me out. It helped me out tremendously. Now I gotta just focus on the minerals, because I didn't know about iron and vitamin D and omega. I didn't know none of that, and that's where I messed up at. But so a couple more questions. You being in the marketing industry, what is the biggest mistake you see businesses make when marketing to vegans?
Ooh, marketing to vegans. I actually don't see a lot of that. Although I know that that's how Beyond Meat and Oatly, like Oatly is another one of these big, very successful vegan companies. That's how they started. They started marketing to vegans, and then vegans are the ones who kind of like widen the circle. And said to our said to the non-vegans, like, this product's great, you should try it. And then all of a sudden now they have a consumer base of non-vegans. I think just having a really strong message. And that's a rule for no matter what you're selling. Yeah. But I think if you, I'm not going to talk about like how to market to vegans because most companies don't do that. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a great place to start, especially for startups who are, selling, let's say, a plant-based meat alternative. Target the vegans first. Absolutely. Because they're the ones that are for sure going to buy your product or try your product versus the non-vegans. But what I see most vegan companies not doing is kind of being bold and out there. Like, in order to stand out, you have to do something differently. So if it's not going to be like in your messaging, like pick a marketing tactic and like really master it. So one example that I share in my book is Midday Squares, which is a functional vegan chocolate bar company in Montreal. And one of the great things that they did when they first started out is they decided they were going to document everything. So they hired a videographer before they hired their first salesperson. And that videographer, all they did was just like follow the founders around in the office or out at events and wherever they went. And they would cut content and they would just be a content machine. And so what happened as a result of that is they brought people behind the scenes of their company. So everyone could see what's happening behind the scenes. And they built their cult following. They're in year 6 or 7 now, I believe. And huge following. And things like that. So they really mastered the marketing tactic of building their own reality show online. Okay. Primarily through Instagram. But you can do other things if it's not that, you know what I mean? Like you gotta do stuff that's out of the box. Like Oatly is always doing out of the box weird stuff. But that's part of their brand.
So let me ask you this. This is it's still the same question, but it's not really vegan related. It's more of marketing yourself in general. So you've been in the marketing industry for over 10 years, right?
Yeah, like nearing 20 now since I started.
20 years. Yeah. So let me ask you this then. What is the mistakes people make when they I'm sorry, let me rephrase the question. What are the common mistakes people make when marketing themselves?
Yeah, again, I think it's not doing enough. So I always call like the basics, social media, which is free. You don't have to be on every platform, but you got to be on 1 or 2 and just really have a strong presence on them. Blogs. Nobody talks about blogs except for me, I feel like. But blogs on a website are a really easy way to get to increase your search optimization, search engine optimization, your SEO.
So blog, how can you blog? I'm like, yeah.
A blog is basically an entry, a story. It doesn't have to be like a story like here's what I did today. It could be like news that's happening at the company. If you appeared on a podcast like this, you could post the transcript of that. That could be a blog post. If there's instructions along with your product, that's another blog post. There's millions of ideas, but the whole point is to just do blogs so that you increase the amount of content that's on your website and the likelihood people will find you when they Google certain keywords for your company.
So when you say people's not doing enough, you think because they're not posting enough on social media, they not, they not talking to people face to face? What do you mean about some people's not doing enough?
I think it all comes down to resources. So if you're a solopreneur like me, you may not have a lot of budget, but you have time. And so you just have to make sure you use that time wisely. This year I've started to outsource 2 of my 4 weekly blogs to someone else. I have a VA who's actually going to do that content for me. So even I'm outsourcing that work to load off myself. The other thing that I say is emails. You got to build an email list because if let's say you put all your eggs into one social media platform and then something happens to it, like it goes down for a day, or like me, you got hacked, and you don't have access to your account, you need another way to contact your audience. And that's why an email list is so important. Okay. So those are what I call your basics. And I find like people usually don't master all of them. They're doing maybe one or two pretty good, but they're not on, but they're not doing all of the basics. But if you are, like, that's your content foundation, then you can start layering on all this other stuff. So ads, doing media outreach, publishing a book, doing a podcast, like that's where all that other, your marketing budget, once you have one, you can spend on those other things. But it's really like those basics, and really like, again, coming up with something different. Like, what is your brand voice? What is the message you're putting out to your audience? And is there a marketing tactic that you can master that nobody else maybe in your industry or sector is doing all that well, that can make you stand out?
So I want to ask, off topic, how did you get hacked? You talking about your Instagram?
Yeah,
how'd that happen?
Okay, so number one tip, people, is to set up two-factor authentication on all of your social media accounts. It was completely my fault because I clicked on a weird link through Facebook Messenger about a week before. And because of that, they got access to my email and password for Facebook. But because I had two-factor authentication set up on Facebook, they couldn't get in. But what they probably did was they guessed correctly at my Instagram password, because I have a similar formula for my passwords. Damn. And they guessed at the Instagram one a week later, and they got in. And once they got in, they changed the username, they changed the email, they changed the phone number, and so I couldn't get into my own account. And it's been 5 months, and I haven't. The account's been disabled, but Meta hasn't basically given it back to me. So I'm actually probably going to start new this weekend, start fresh. Okay. Because I mean, you got to at some point decide how long you're going to wait for Meta to return it to you, or just start anew. So
that's crazy. So one of my last questions. So I know you're from, I don't know how you worded it. I'm trying to correct me if I'm wrong, but like, you're from a country that your ancestors not from. Does that make sense? If I'm saying that correctly? Yes. So how did you maneuver through life knowing that my ancestors not from here, and how was you treated, growing up and stuff like that?
Yeah, it was a really interesting question, because I do feel like I'm Canadian. I was born in Canada. I was born in Montreal. Then my family moved here to Vancouver, a couple months after I was born. So I call Vancouver home, and I consider myself like a Canadian. Of course, my parents' Filipino upbringing and their culture and their food was a big part of my life. I know I'm Filipino in terms of my ancestry, but it wasn't. Yeah, kind of like the idea of just like being a settler in Canada just didn't really click in until probably like 6 or 7 years ago, when the notion of reconciliation and Indigenous peoples and the importance of like recognizing whose land you're on really started to like become a conversation both in business and just, in government and in media. And so, it wasn't until...
So I want to ask you, sorry to cut you off, I got to ask you this. So you never experienced no discrimination at all?
I would say very little, because the school that I grew up in was predominantly Filipinos. We have a big Filipino population here in Vancouver, and especially in the Catholic community. So I grew up in Catholic elementary and high school, and most of us were Filipino. So we were actually the majority in that community. And I honestly didn't see myself as, as a minority until I entered college. And I saw all the other people that were in university and realized, I'm not the majority here anymore.
Okay. Yeah, because when I think of Toronto, Canada, I think of bacon. Canadian, I'm saying it wrong. correct me. Canadian bacon. I'm not pronouncing it right. But all I know is I think about the bacon and
Yep.
a lot of happy people. That's what I think of Canada. I don't and marijuana. Is marijuana legal down there?
Yep. Across the country, it's legal.
Yeah, so that's what I think of Canada. So I never thought like Canada can have like discrimination. So maybe that's everywhere, I guess. But
oh, absolutely, it's everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. I never. Oh dang. Okay, because when I was reading some information about you, it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. I never would thought that. But yeah. So you growing up in Canada and you been a middle child. How was that growing up? How was it growing up for you being a middle child? What did you learn of being a middle child?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I always thought it sucked really bad because because when you have an older sibling, they're kind of the leader. You have to respect them, and then the youngest child usually gets spoiled. I don't want to say across the board, but in every family that I know that has a youngest child, they usually get it pretty easy. And so I was always like, why do I get the shit end of the stick over here? But as I became an adult, I realized this position is, it has a privilege where I've learned negotiating and diplomatic skills because I've had to get along with my older sister, and my sister and I are closer in age, so that hasn't been really difficult. And then getting along with a younger brother, it kind of taught me just how to navigate different people, and try not to start fights wherever you go, and then keep the peace. So that's kind of the superpower that I feel middle children bring to the world.
No, I agree because I'm a middle child as well. Well, my parents adopted my two younger siblings, but I'm like the third oldest. I don't know if you consider that middle child or not, but okay, yeah. So it taught me patience. It taught me to be open-minded. It even taught me when I have children how to go about things and stuff like that. So, like you said, being a middle child it is a privilege, and especially if you learning from other people's mistakes and stuff like that. So
my sister definitely carved the path and showed what to do and what not to do in life. No, for sure. So this is my last three questions. First question is I want to ask you is, you mentioned earlier about, if you feel comfortable talking about this, overcoming like childhood trauma. So there's a lot of people who stuck in that victim mentality. You're right. So, and you made something out of your life, and which I applaud you. So there's someone who's struggling with that, overcoming the struggles. You know what I mean? So what I'm asking you is, what is your advice for someone who want to overcome their childhood trauma? We all have it for sure. I think, you just have to find the tools and the people that are going to help you navigate that. It might not ever leave your life, but I think it's important to come to a point where you can function, normally or function optimally, while not letting that trauma surface day to day. I think that's the goal. And then in terms of what'll help you get there, I mean, it's different for everyone. It might be therapy for you. I think therapy is a great tool for everybody. For me, I find I've been meditating for 11 years, twice daily, almost like consistently. For me, meditation is my tool of choice because it's my quiet time. And it's not just for introverts. I think anytime you can just sit in silence and be with yourself and feel whole in that, I think, again, that's helped me a lot. There's a number of other tools I kind of bring in, like breath work, I think is great. You can YouTube great breath work exercises. I think it's important to just get support.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, and
I agree 100%.
And therapy is probably the number one way that people do it. Not the only way, but
yeah,
in terms of support from other people.
Yeah, because everyone have their own way of doing that. And I like your response. You're not forcing people to do this and this and this and that. Sometimes, people got to figure out their own way. So that's nice. That's a nice response. Because, 'cause for me, I had to forgive. I had to understand that my parents just like us, They was trying to figure life out, then they had us, and then, they got to figure life out and worry about kids. They may not make the best decisions, and I had to understand too where their mind frame was at during that time and what they was going through. And you never know, like sometimes you don't know how life will be when you have children, and you might make unintentional mistakes. So it helped me to be more for me. What helped me heal is basically being mindful and being more understanding, so so
I think realizing your parents are human, and they didn't know everything when they had you and when they raised you, I think is really humbling, because you realize they were doing hopefully the best that they knew they could. And then it helps you see them as humans rather than people who knew it all.
Have you forgave your mom?
Yeah, for sure.
That's good.
Yeah.
Most kids, they just, I just not understand. You don't know what other people go through, but for you to say you forgave your mom, that's good. I applaud you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So, last question. What is the biggest takeaway you want readers to get from vegan marketing success stories?
So my book is it might be similar to the other marketing books you might see on the market, but the difference is all of the contributed case studies and the examples that I use are of vegan companies. So if you're a founder, or if you're not even vegan, but you're in a marketing role for a vegan company and you really need to kind of get into that vegan psyche, this is the book that will do it for you. And it's the world's first vegan marketing book. There's still nothing like it out there. And I really tried to jam pack it with all of the possible tactics you could possibly do. It's actually not new. It'll be about 2.5 years since it's been out. But I would say everything that's in it still is pretty relevant. Nothing has changed too much since it was published. So I think folks who are in a vegan company, in a vegan business, or just wanting to learn more about the industry, you'll get that from this book.
Okay, cool. Well,
here's the cover.
The cover. Okay, yeah, man, y'all check that out. Definitely gonna help you promote it. And I want to visit Toronto. And anybody that's visiting that's vegan, what spots you think they should check out?
Oh, Toronto, I mean, Vancouver. I was only Vancouver. Okay. I was going to shout out Planta in Toronto, even though I've never been there. But Vancouver. I mean, we're so lucky here. We have a lot of different cuisines. So there's meat, which is more of a diner, chickpea, which is Middle Eastern food, folk, which is a little bit more high end if you want something more fancy, Mila plant-based, is kind of your mid-range, nice place. But kind of whatever you're craving here, we're pretty lucky that there's a place where you can find it, even if it's not at an all-vegan restaurant. There's a lot of options, usually at most places you go to.
Okay, cool. All right, well, that's all the questions I have. I want to say thank you for taking this time out and, keep on striving. And whatever I can do to help to market your business, please let me know. I'm willing to share. So, thank you.
Thanks so much, Katie. And I'll just tell folks, if you want to follow me or find out more about my book, my website is my name, so sandranomoto.com. I'm most active on LinkedIn. I plan on starting you on Instagram, so just find my name. If you see a private account, that's the one that's not me. But hopefully I'll get my No, because yeah. So the hacker created a second account. That's not me. So the one that's currently up there is a fraud account. Oh, but I'm hoping that if we can get that taken down, then I can use my old name again. So, yeah, I will someday be on Instagram. Not anytime soon.
You know, so
you'll find me there.
It's crazy because yesterday I found you on Instagram. I thought it was you, and I sent the request, and I ain't even. That's crazy. Okay.
Now you know.
them bastards. All right, cool. Well, that's all I have. Thank you.
You're so welcome, Katie. This was this was fun.
Oh, for sure.